My name is Joana Tsuhlares. I'm the president of SUIS. This is my best friend from high school and acting BFA major from West Virginia University, Adam Payne. But what we're going to be doing today is debunking/discussing phobias of the bard, what you're afraid of when you read or perform Shakespeare.
Period. Do you want me to take it away?
Yeah, let's start with you.
Cheers.
Yeah, cheers.
Cheers.
Oh, go into the camera. Yeah.
Oh, ching.
Yeah. So we each came up with five fears that, I don't know, we had before doing Shakespeare, and we're just gonna count down the list and discuss and debunk, and it's gonna be beautiful.
My first thing that when I was going into Shakespeare this semester was the voice, okay? Because I think there is this misconception that when you do Shakespeare, you have to talk with this proper / British dialect.
Yeah.
That I think because so much of like the iconic Shakespeare performances were done by the Brits and by the affluent, that people think that Shakespeare, that's like the way to do it. Literally yesterday, my school is doing King Lear right now. My dad was like, so did you have to do an accent? Like, how's the accent going? And I was like, what are you talking about? And he's like, for King Lear. And I was like, what? There is no accent in Shakespeare, father. That's like, it doesn't exist. I was like, he's like, you just talk like that? And I was like, yes, I just talk like this.
People think that Shakespeare's prim and proper, but like there's a lot of sex jokes, and there's a lot of like, and it's not always very prim and proper. It's often like there's a lot of humor in there that if you are looking at it from a prim and proper way, it's just going to go over your head. One is iambic pentameter.
Heard of her.
Yeah.
What about it?
She's scary. Here, my first thing was I didn't understand. When I was reading the script, I couldn't tell what was verse and what was in prose. So I would be reading it and people would be like, oh, this is in verse, so that means, and I'm like, whoa, how do you know that?
Yeah.
Here's a snazzy little tip. If all the letters on the first letters of the line are capitalized, it's verse.
Period.
That like, and
I had no idea.
Like I don't think I learned that until I'd already done 2 Shakespeare shows. I just want to say that, and it changed my life. So there you go.
I say that goes into my number 2. This is gonna sound bad. Yes, it is very important, but like when you're performing and acting Shakespeare, you don't need to be thinking about it that much. You know what I mean? Because I remember when I first was like doing it, I was like, am I like getting the rhythm right? Like, is this right? Because you guys just keep talking about this rhythm thing. Am I getting it down? It's like, if you're saying it and you're putting meaning behind it, girl, it's like,
you don't think like the only time I think you need to think about it while you're performing is if it affects the pronunciation of a word. So like the eds at the end, like that's because that's because of the verse. So that's the only time that I think you should do that, and you do that when you're memorizing. And then the other thing that verse is good for is like while you're prepping and figuring out what your character's doing. Like I recently directed a scene from the Scottish play, and if you are like looking at that, you can see how like when Macbeth is upset or like, you know, in a frazzled state of mind, the verse starts falling apart. It's not in the, maybe I should put the explanation of what iambic is here. It's a line of 10 syllables broken up into like 5 feet. So you have an unstressed, stressed, that's a foot. Unstressed, stressed, that's a foot. And that happens 5 times, adding up to 10 syllables. Yeah.
But when a character, like you said, has heightened emotion or is like thinking or overthinking, a lot of times they'll have a feminine ending or like a little sneaky boy stuck in there or a trochee, and it's like, oh.
Yeah, and
This is
a feminine ending is when it has a extra unstressed syllable at the end. And I forget the word is for when it has, like, you can have an extra foot on there, or it can get funky.
Yeah, like funky.
Yeah. And sometimes there's like other verse forms, like I don't know the names of them off the top of my head, but like I know the witches in Macbeth talk in something different. And
Yeah,
like Ariel and the Tempest has some funky stuff. And
yeah, I did a Puck monologue and my teacher was like, actually this is tetrameter. And I was like, oh, okay. And then I was like, what is that? What? And she was like, just know it. You don't have to overthink it. Just know it. And I was like, okay. And then I feel like that's like my main takeaway from the IAMs. It's like, know it, but don't work at it too hard, because then it just becomes like horses galloping. Like,
my number 2, memorizing.
oh, heard of it.
Yeah. One of my biggest fears was memorizing. My first Shakespeare show, I was the nurse in Titus Andronicus. I'm sure you've heard of her. But I only had like one monologue, but I was so afraid of it because I thought it was going to be really hard to memorize. And a lot of times people talk a lot in Shakespeare. And so that was intimidating for me.
Like, I was the same way. I was like, God, these are so long. But he breaks it down like so obviously by like thought and by like modifiers of thought that I feel like it makes the roadmap of like what you're reading so clear compared to like a modern text, you know?
Mm-hmm. Like I'm currently doing a show or like memorizing a show that is like, yes, no, da da, you know, like random. That is really hard for me. So the fact that you have a chunk at a time, I feel like helps you figure out where you are.
Yes. This isn't necessarily a fear, but a misconception that I had about Shakespeare, that yes, there's this rhythm, but that doesn't mean that you can't like be slow sometimes and pause sometimes. You know what I mean? Like still be a human, because I think a lot of people, like when they first start, like I was this way, just go through it because like endlessly, because they're keeping up with the rhythm. But then during King Lear, we're working with this professional actress playing King Lear, and she takes her time sometimes. Like she will draw out one word for like a whole 5 seconds, and I'm like, you can do that? Like, and it doesn't change anything. And
a lot of times you'll see like repetitions of sounds and like or like I don't know, and I feel like you can really like savor the language. Like there's all these like great words, and it's like take advantage of it.
period.
Like play with it. And then also I think you said this earlier with your first thing, like they're just people talking. Like I had to do to be or not to be a year ago, and I remember being like, okay, to be or not to be, that is a question whether it is, and I was like, okay, what does this mean? And then I broke it down and like actually like listened to what it was saying, and I was like, you know, this isn't as like high up, like hard to understand as like you think it is. It's this person expressing themselves, you know. And if you think about it as just like someone talking about how they feel or what, you know, expressing that to someone, it's so much more accessible, and you can take the time to like actually feel what you're talking about, you know.
Exactly. Yeah.
My number 3 is unspoken rules.
What do you mean by that?
I was afraid that I was breaking all these rules that I didn't know existed. And they don't exist. That's really the end of that rule.
Like don't basically don't overthink it, because if you're saying it, and you know what you're saying,
Yeah.
it's probably enough.
Yeah. No, I mean, honestly, because I remember being like, I'm gonna get it wrong. Like, you know,
Yeah.
if like all of these like great people had these ideas of what this sentence means, then my like 18, 19, 20-year-old brain will, I must have the wrong answer. And the answer is that if you can back it up with text and you know what you're talking about and you have a clear idea, you're right. It doesn't matter what those other people think.
Exactly. And
You're right.
I also think that there is like this unspoken thing that people are afraid because Shakespeare's so revered. He's like put on this pedestal. When you really think about it, Shakespeare has been done by so many people so many times that like the only thing that you can bring to it is yourself. So it's like,
Yeah.
just fuck. Can I cuss?
Yeah.
Just do it. You know what I mean?
Like commit to what you're doing. I guess that also goes with that.
Mm-hmm. One of the hardest things about Shakespeare, obviously, is the language, and there's so many words in here that you're not gonna know, and the people that are listening are not gonna know. But here's what you gotta do. If you look it up and you understand what you're saying, you can't force someone to understand a reference to something that was a cultural aspect of the 1500s, 1600s, because they're not gonna know. But if you know, and you deliver it like you know, that's all you can do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm playing the Fool in King Lear right now, and there's so many jokes that are like referencing this poem from 1492. And I'm like, okay, no one's going to get this. But if I get it and I deliver it like I get it, that's all I can do.
Number 4 was vocabulary.
Well, period. We're
Yeah.
on the same page.
Yeah.
You gotta know what you're saying though. Like you got to look up the words because
Like, I feel like that if you know what you're talking about, you're already like over halfway there.
the characters do be saying how they feel pretty often. So like if you know what you're saying, half the acting is done because you're saying it right there. I'm sad. If you say it, there you go.
You still have the emotional stuff, but
right. But it's like it's right there. Reiterate the point. They're just people saying things because like there's just this reverence of the text and like this poetry. It's poetry. So getting over that reverence and realizing that like they're just people talking in the same way that we learn in like Meisner or anything. Like they're just two people having a conversation, doing something. And the doing a lot of the times is the words, but there's just at the end of the day, it's a combo.
Speaking skills.
Oh.
Yeah, I think that is kind of important to have your enunciation correct. Also, sort of going back to vocabulary, know what a word means, but also know how to pronounce it, and know how to pronounce it within the verse. Because also sometimes, like we said earlier, the verse can affect the pronunciation. That can also affect character. Like I recently did Romeo and Juliet. I was Friar Lawrence, and Friar Lawrence, like I think it's, you can tell how he's talking to Romeo by how many syllables are in Romeo's name. So when it's just casual Romeo, it's 2. But when he's like, now Romeo, it's 3. Shakespeare was an actor. Shakespeare is trying to help his actors. So if you like listen to that, it's Shakespeare giving you some acting notes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he has no like, he doesn't write like angrily like modern playwrights do. You know what I mean? It's all ingrained in the rhythm and the word choice and the way he stretches and pulls words, makes up words, shortens and lengthens words, that you find that emotion.
Yeah. And another thing with the speaking skills that I'll throw in there, in addition to like that emotional actor side, this is more on a technical side, is like knowing what your space is and then how to speak based on that, because like, they're more in like intimate spaces. And so when you do that, you can like really play with how small can you get or how big can you get. Like you don't have to, not, I don't think you ever should overact, but like if you're in a big space, you got to support that sound, and you got to like,
a little
because
bit.
if you're missing the language, you're missing a lot of the point of Shakespeare. So like, because like all his plots are plagiarized, man. So the language is what we care about. So I think like making sure you're clear on what you're saying and we can understand it. Hit those ending consonants, support your sound. So I guess we debunked little less. I don't know exact, because we had some overlap, so I don't know exactly what the number was.
I'd say still 10.
Yeah, a 10. We had some good talking points.
Yeah.
So now I think you are fully prepared to read or perform some Shakespeare.
Yeah. You don't even need a director anymore. Just us two.
Yeah.
Watch this one video, you're done.
You're done. You know everything about Shakespeare.
The work is never done. Lesson number 11. Keep working.
Yeah, keep learning. There's always more. Also, one other quick thing.
Ooh.
We had to watch these videos for my Shakespeare class. I forget the name of them. They were like professional, like Sir Patrick Stewart. Yeah, Sir Patrick Stewart's in these videos, I think. Yeah, and like a bunch of other famous people, and they have trouble with it. They're like, what does this mean? I don't know. So I guess it's like all those like performers that do Shakespeare, and you're like, oh my God, they're like gods and goddesses of the bard. No,
they gotta do just as much work.
Yeah,
because it's a lot of work. Lovely. I'm happy to infiltrate Shenandoah's socials for a day.
Yeah. You're welcome. You're welcome back anytime.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.